My sister Talia was always the story our family wanted to tell, the one they proudly introduced at dinner parties and church picnics. Our Talia, Mom would say with her hand on someone's shoulder, like they were lucky to even hear her name. Miss Teen Blue Ridge, debate team captain, interior design graduate, engaged to the son of a local councilman. Everything about her life looked like a polished brochure curated, bright, and entirely on schedule. And then there was me. I wasn't the problem. Exactly. I just wasn't interesting. I read quietly, got decent grades, didn't need reminders, didn't need applause. I was the one who refilled the Brita pitcher, took out the trash without being asked, the one they forgot to call down for family game nights, then said, "Oh, sorry, sweetheart. We thought you were busy with school." It was easier not to mind. Most of the time. The house had been a flurry of activity for weeks now. Swatches of ivory and rose gold fabrics trailed across the dining table. Mom took daily phone calls with the caterer, and I learned more about fondant tears than I ever cared to know. Dad was mostly quiet, but dutiful writing checks and nodding through tastings. Talia floated through it all like a bride in a dream. No one asked where I'd been. No one noticed I wasn't in the group text with the wedding planner. Then, on a gray Tuesday afternoon, the letter came. Early admission. Northwestern University. I read the email twice to make sure, then printed it just to hold something real. I walked upstairs and sat on my bed, clutching it like proof I existed. I didn't run downstairs. I didn't interrupt anyone. I just folded the letter, slid it into the envelope Grandpa Ellis had left with my name on it years ago, and whispered, "I'm going." When he gave me that envelope, he'd said, "This fund is your key to freedom. They'll never see you coming." I pressed my thumb against the seal. The paper inside didn't feel like money. It felt like a door. I was going to walk through it. I just didn't know yet what they'd already done behind it. Grandpa Ellis never said much when other people were in the room, but when it was just the two of us usually on the porch swing while everyone else buzzed around inside, his words felt like small anchors dropped into my world. The last time we sat together, he handed me a manila envelope with my full name written across the front. Not Honey, not Sweet Pea, just Callan Marie Reese in his thin, deliberate handwriting. He looked tired that afternoon, thinner than I wanted to admit, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "This is for later," he said. "When you're ready to go, college, a new place, whatever opens up for you." I remember asking, "What if they don't agree?" He smiled without humor. "They won't have a say. It's yours. Legally. I've seen to it. That envelope lived at the back of my desk drawer ever since. I never opened it, didn't need to. I believed him. And when the email came from Northwestern, the first thing I did was take it out and place it gently on top, side by side, the future and the promise that made it possible. Inside was a notarized letter outlining the educational trust he'd created, $75,000. The trustee was listed as my parents, but the terms were clear, to be used exclusively for the educational advancement of Callan Marie Reese. No exceptions, no rerouting, no wedding venues, no sister. There was also a letter, handwritten on lined paper. "Callan, this is your start line. I hope one day you use it to outrun everything they failed to see in you." I spent the next few days building spreadsheets, checking housing costs in Evanston, mapping out tuition estimates. I watched dorm tours and read student forums. For the first time in a long while, I was making decisions just for me. Then, 1 week later, I logged into the account to finalize the payment plan. The balance glared back at me $0. At first, I thought it was a glitch, a page that hadn't fully loaded, or a bank error I could clear up with a quick phone call. I refreshed the screen twice, logged out, logged back in, but the number didn't change. Balance $0. Zero. The breath caught in my chest like I'd swallowed something sharp. I clicked into the transaction history. Fingers stiff. Every movement slower than it should have been. A single transfer. All $75,000. Gone. 2 weeks ago. The destination account number looked familiar. I checked the old records from Grandpa's trust documentation. It matched one of our joint family accounts, the one Dad always said he'd keep just in case there were emergencies or deadlines I couldn't manage on my own. At 17, I'd signed the paperwork without thinking. It made them feel needed, harmless. I thought, like backup. I scrolled down and saw the memo line fund consolidation, family expense. My mouth went dry. I clicked through every screen I could. There was no note about repayment, no pending transaction. Just a clean, silent extraction. I called the bank, still hoping for a system error, still pretending this wasn't what it looked like. The woman on the other end was kind, but firm. She confirmed that the transfer had been authorized by both Marlene and Graham Reese, the account's co-trustees. All permissions were valid. She said, "I'm sorry, Miss Reese." I sat there for a long time, just staring at the screen, the way someone might stare at the outline of a body on the ground. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the message. We knew what this was, and we took it anyway. I pulled the envelope from my drawer again and reread the letter from Ellis, his cursive sharp even in old age. My hands shook, my teeth clenched, but I didn't cry. I closed the letter carefully, folded it back along its crease, and placed it into a new folder labeled Evidence. Downstairs, I could hear Laughter Mom on the phone with the florist, Talia humming to herself in the kitchen. The wedding countdown was in full swing, and now, I knew exactly how they were paying for it. They were in the living room when I came downstairs, Dad flipping through receipts, Mom scrolling on her iPad, murmuring something about seating charts. The air smelled like cinnamon and vanilla, her signature scent for celebration planning. It made my stomach turn. "I need to talk to you," I said. Mom didn't look up. "Can it wait?" "Honey, the photographer just sent over the proofs." "No," I said. "It can't." That got her attention. She lowered the tablet and raised one carefully drawn eyebrow. "Well, I checked my college fund. It's gone." Silence. Dad shifted in his seat but said nothing. I saw the transaction. I continued. "You transferred all of it, $75,000, 2 weeks ago." Mom exhaled like I'd just reminded her to take something out of the freezer. "Yes, we did." I blinked. "You." "What?" She set the iPad down gently. "Colin, you know how expensive weddings are. Your sister's day is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. We had to make choices. That wasn't your money to choose from." Her voice lost its warmth. "You're too young to understand how family works. Sometimes, sacrifices are necessary for the greater good." I turned to Dad. "You let this happen?" He stared at his hands. "Your mom handled most of the planning. Coward. Northwestern expects the deposit in 3 weeks." I said, "That was my tuition. My future." Mom folded her arms. "Maybe you don't need college yet. Maybe a gap year would give you some perspective." The words hit harder than the theft. Talia came in then, barefoot and holding a box of favors. "What's going on?" "You paid for your wedding with my college fund," I told her, without blinking. She froze. "What, I didn't know that," she said, turning to our parents. "Is that true?" "We did what was best for the family," Mom snapped. Talia looked at me, eyes wide with something close to horror. "Cal." "I had no idea." I nodded once. I believed her. She left the room with the box still in her arms, lips pressed tight. I walked upstairs, closed my door, and pulled out the trust paperwork again. Grandpa Ellis hadn't just left me a gift, he'd left me a safeguard. The terms were binding. What they did wasn't just betrayal, it was illegal. And now, I intended to prove it. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't storm out of the house and collapse dramatically in a friend's driveway. That would have made it easier for them given them a scene to point at. To say, "See, she's emotional. She's being unreasonable." Instead, I folded the trust papers again, tucked them back into the folder labeled Evidence, and shut my bedroom door. The silence wasn't comforting. It was surgical, clean, cold, clinical. I sat at my desk, the Northwestern acceptance letter still lying neatly beside my keyboard, and opened Grandpa Ellis's handwritten letter for the 5th time that week. You'll never have their noise. He'd written, but noise isn't power. Quiet people know how to plan. I traced the edge of his signature with the tip of my finger, then opened a blank tab and typed in how to challenge misuse of educational trust. It started there, one vague search. Then another: can trustees be sued for breach? Is it illegal to use college fund for wedding state laws for inheritance fraud? North Carolina within an hour. I was building a digital folder, PDFs of state regulations, case studies, even a Reddit thread where someone had successfully sued a parent for misusing a college fund. I'd bookmarked legal aid clinics and law firm FAQs. I copied Ellis's original terms into a document and highlighted every phrase that mattered. By the 3rd hour, I had found his lawyer, Mr. Calvin Dobson, retired but still listed as of counsel at a small firm downtown. I emailed, included scanned copies of the trust, and explained that I believed the fund had been illegally drained. Then I sat back in my chair, not tired but stripped down. This wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was grief, shaped into something sharper. They hadn't just taken money. They'd taken legacy, protection, the one adult who had looked at me not through me and promised I'd have a way out, a way forward. I closed all the tabs and opened one final document. I titled it simply, Timeline. Every date, every transaction, every call. I'd build it one line at a time. The email reply from Mr. Dobson came early the next morning. He was available to meet Thursday at noon. He wrote, Ellis would want me to take a look, and I knew I would be there. Mr. Dobson met me in a quiet back office that smelled faintly of old paper and lemon polish. He was older than I remembered, with silver eyebrows and a voice that moved slowly, but when he read through the documents I brought, the sharpness returned to his expression like someone turning on a light. He was very specific. He said, tapping a line in the trust paperwork, exclusively for the educational advancement of Callan Marie Reese. That wording isn't flexible. It's enforceable. I swallowed. So, what they did was a violation. Plain and simple. We spent the next hour reviewing timelines, transaction logs, and emails. I signed an affidavit. Mr. Dobson made copies of everything. He said the first step would be filing for an injunction to freeze remaining assets, whatever hadn't already been spent on monogrammed napkins and custom lighting. A week later, the filing went through. The court date was set. The suit was official breach of fiduciary duty, misuse of trust, violation of inheritance terms. I didn't tell them. I didn't warn them. They found out at brunch. Marlene had organized a tasting at a vineyard an hour outside town. Vendors were everywhere: florist, planner, caterer, violinist. I know because one of Talia's friends posted a picture of the setup on Instagram that morning. By noon, they were sipping champagne and discussing centerpiece heights when 2 process servers walked up and asked for Marlene and Graham Reese. The white envelopes were thick, formal, quietly devastating. Talia texted me less than an hour later. "What did you do? Mom's having a meltdown." She screamed at the wedding planner. Dad had to sit her down. I didn't answer. I just looked at the court documents, now officially filed under my name, and made a small note in the margin. Served 12:08 p.m., location Croft Estate Winery. The power had shifted, not loudly, not with a fight, but legally, permanently, and the next move was mine. The courtroom wasn't grand. No high ceilings or echoing drama, just a modest space with worn carpet and creaking chairs. But the silence inside held weight. Marlene sat to my left, pearls tight against her neck, lips pressed into a line. Graham beside her, eyes lowered. They hadn't spoken to me since the brunch. Now we shared the same air but none of the history. Mr. Dobson stood and began simply, presenting the trust documents. The notarized letter from Ellis, the transaction logs from the bank. No dramatics, no flourishes, just fact after fact. each one unfolding like a quiet betrayal spoken aloud. When it was Marlene's turn, she shifted in her seat, then rose with a delicate smile aimed directly at the judge. This was a misunderstanding. She began. A family matter blown out of proportion. My daughter Callan, she's a good student, but she's sensitive. She saw this as punishment, when it was really a temporary adjustment. We were going to replace the money after the wedding expenses settled. This lawsuit. It's unnecessary. It's cruel. She sat down, still smiling. Mr. Dobson didn't flinch. He handed the judge one final document, Ellis's letter, the one he wrote in his own hand, months before his death. The judge read it silently, then looked back at Marlene. I see no misunderstanding here. I see a clear breach of fiduciary duty. You violated the terms of the trust. Full restitution will be made, legal fees included. The gavel struck once. Marlene's mouth opened, then closed. No words came. Graham stood slowly, one hand on the bench for balance. They didn't look at me. Not once. They just walked out together, each step heavy with something they hadn't expected to carry. I stayed seated as the room emptied, the sound of the gavel still echoing faintly in my chest. Not revenge, just return. Talia showed up 2 days after the ruling. No text, no call, just a knock on my door that came too gently to be anyone else. She stood there holding a white gift box, the kind you'd see at an upscale bridal shower. Her makeup was minimal, her hair pulled into a low knot. She looked tired, like someone who'd just learned the world wasn't as curated as the one she'd been raised to believe in. I didn't know. She said, I swear to God, Callan, I didn't know they took it from you. I stepped aside to let her in. She sat on the edge of my bed, holding the box in her lap. They lied to me, too. They said they were using some backup retirement savings, that it wasn't a big deal. She looked up, her voice thinner now. I believed them, and that makes me part of it, even if I didn't mean to be. I sat across from her, saying nothing, just listening. She opened the box and pushed it toward me. Inside was a designer clutch, sleek. Silver. With a tag I didn't bother reading. It was a gift from one of Owen's aunts. I figured you could sell it, put it toward books or travel, or whatever Northwestern throws at you. I didn't say thank you, not because I wasn't grateful, but because something else filled the space between us. Older than thanks. Something built in long silences, in back seats on road trips, in split desserts and unspoken understandings. You didn't owe me that. I said, I know, she replied, but I owed me that. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat there for a while, the box between us, neither of us reaching for it. She left an hour later, saying she had a dress fitting to cancel and a few truths to return. After she was gone, I placed the box in the closet and opened my laptop again. A new email from Northwestern Admissions was waiting in my inbox. The subject line read, Updated Aid Package, Fall Term. I clicked before I could brace myself. Northwestern had reviewed my situation. They'd spoken to Mr. Dobson. The revised financial aid award covered what my family was meant to provide. Loans, grants, scholarships somehow. They'd made it work. I stared at the numbers, relief settling into my shoulders like a quiet exhale. I was going. I didn't tell anyone. I just went to the bank, opened my own account, no co-signers, no shared permissions, and transferred what was left of my savings into it. I ordered checks in my name and paid the enrollment deposit within the hour. That night, I registered for an online intro course in legal writing, just one class, just enough to learn the language that people like Marlene hoped I'd never speak fluently. Later, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter to my mother. I told her the truth, that I hadn't expected an apology, and I certainly wasn't waiting for one, that I knew she'd never admit what it cost her to lose control. I told her I understood now she hadn't stolen the money because she needed it. She'd stolen it because she thought I wouldn't notice. Or, worse, that I'd notice and stay quiet anyway. I wrote, You taught me silence. I turned it into strategy. The letter wasn't angry. It was clear. I folded it, sealed the envelope, and stared at it for a long time. Then I walked to the back porch, lit a match, and let the paper curl and darken in my hand until it disappeared in ash. Some things didn't need to be sent. They just needed to be said. The next morning, I received a campus housing confirmation. Room 213 Weston Hall. Move-in scheduled for August 22nd. I added it to my calendar and opened a new spreadsheet titled Expenses, Independent. By the time classes began, the story felt distant. Not unimportant, just quiet now, tucked behind other things, readings, lectures, briefings, the cadence of a different kind of life. Law school moved fast, but I kept up. I liked the structure of it, the way arguments had to be precise, the way rules had to be followed, the way words finally held weight when used right. I joined a peer group for students from unstable family backgrounds. We met twice a month in a windowless seminar room with mismatched chairs. Most people didn't talk much the first meeting, but by the third, someone finally cracked. A second-year student named Lana shared her story. Her father had drained her FAFSA refund, left her scrambling to cover rent. She'd never told anyone before. I waited until the meeting ended, then slipped her a name, Mr. Dobson. He helped me. I said, "He's not online. You'll have to call." She nodded once, eyes wide. "Thank you." I didn't say more. I didn't have to. Back in my dorm, I kept Ellis's letter folded in the front pocket of my case binder. The edges had worn soft from being read and reread, but the ink still held. Every time I unzipped the binder, I saw his closing line, "They'll never see you coming." And he was right. They didn't. They spent my future. I used their betrayal to build my own.